Hello again. Just took this down off of the wall to give her a bit of a clean up. This is a Snider-Enfield. The original lock date on it is 1864. So obviously that's not when it was converted to a Snider-Enfield, but there's a little piece of something on here. So this particular arm actually saw service with the you can see the markings on here, the first Battalion Militia Rifles, and it was stand number 57. And then this number 28 came later. I'm not sure what the 28 means. I suspect that it may have been issued to another militia battalion later, but I'm not 100% certain on that. But as you can see, it still has the Enfield roundel visible on the butt. It's seen a lot of use. The 1st Battalion actually saw a lot of combat. They were actually in, I believe they were in the last of the Fenian raids. So this rifle may have been in that. This is a Mark II Star. It's hard to say. It may have seen use in the Fenian raid, but I kind of doubt it. I think that this wouldn't have arrived in Canada until after that Fenian raid is over. But it's possible it may have been in it. I think the last Fenian raid was 1870. Somebody will surely be able to correct me, or 1868 or something around there. These Sniders actually came to Canada as basically a gift from England in 1867. They were given to Canada to arm the army, and the Snider at that time was actually the state of the art weapon. Like that would have been like getting your army getting a gift of assault rifles or something today, but Canada actually kept these in service forever. See, this is the big long 3-band. I might well point out this beautiful reproduction sling that I put on the rifle. This is made by a fellow in the UK. He sells under, I think, Shed Time Leather, I think it's called. But anyway, this one here is actually quite an original piece. It's all matching. It has the original square-headed cleaning rod, which you don't really see very often, that the square-headed cleaning rod is found to damage the bore. And they were replaced, I think, after the 2-star. Maybe the 2-star had the rounded cleaning rod, I think. I believe so. I believe the 2-star has the rounded cleaning rod, and so does the Mark III, only the early Marks had that square rod, and that rod actually has the same stand number as the butt plate, so it's the original rod to the gun. But as I was saying, Canada kept these for a ridiculous amount of time in service. We skipped almost entirely the Martini Henry era. I think there were only a couple of units that had the Martini Henrys in limited numbers, and we kept the Snider right up until we got the Lee-Enfield in 1896. I believe our first Lee-Enfields were 1896. They actually we had some of the very first of the Lee-Enfields at that time. Most of the, I think actually all of the ones that you find in Canada that I've seen of Lee-Enfields are really early ones, Mark I's from 1896. But the old Snider, that was our primary arm right up until the 1890s, and even beyond that. You will sometimes, not very often, but you will occasionally find these that haven't been altered in any way, and they'll have a an issue marking on the butt from dates. The latest I've ever seen, I think, was 1905. But yeah, Canada, for whatever reason, I guess just the government at the time didn't want to spend any money on defense. Well, where does that sound familiar from, huh? But they just didn't want to spend any money, so we did have some Martini Henrys, but they were basically issued to units that were going to Bisley. They weren't actually given to the militia. So these things soldiered on long past when they should have been retired. That's why you see like this one has so much damage to the stock. And we can turn it over here, and it's really hard to see. It's very faint and the lighting isn't good. But this does have, let's just move it into the light a little bit more. You can just barely see it here. Oh, maybe it's on the other side. Let me just flip it over again here. No, I just can't see it. I don't know what this big 15 is on the side. That almost looks like the markings that were on ship's guns, so I wonder if this didn't go to maybe a sealing schooner or something after it was retired from the military. But this does have the DC and a diamond on it somewhere. I know it's really hard to see. It's time to give it a little bit of a clean up too. It's got some speckling going on here. But in any case, there's the DC and a diamond on somewhere that you can see. There's a little triangle here too, but that might be just that's a coincidental mark from some damage. Yeah, actually, you know what we're going to do? Let's just give it a squirt of this. And I'll just rub this ballistol into it. Oh, there it is. You can just barely make it out right above my finger. You can just barely see the diamond. And if you angle it a little bit, you can see the DC. It's really hard to see. Okay. You see the diamond there. It doesn't show up as well on camera, but you can see it is the Dominion of Canada ownership stamp. So, yeah, these are quite an interesting old arm to have in a collection. This one was, as I said, it's all complete. It also has the original bayonet with it too. With the bayonet on, it's about 6 feet. The bore is in not quite excellent condition. I'd rate it as probably very good. It's definitely still shootable. So, Canada, you know, it always surprised me when IMA had a whole pile of those junkers for sale that came from Nepal. That they passed them off originally as original British military Snider-Enfields, but they actually weren't. They were actually Nepalese copies of the 1853 converted into Sniders. And you know, they weren't very good quality weapons to begin with. Nepal's manufacturing at that time was kind of in its infancy. No, not knocking Nepal or anything. They did produce some pretty amazing things, but those weren't one of them. The quality tends to vary a lot on them. Some of them you look down the bore and interestingly enough, what they did copy was they copied the tapered rifling. So with these rifles, the rifling at the breech is deeper than it is at the end of the barrel. It's copied from the, well, because they used the barrels from the 1853 muzzle loaders. And the Nepalese actually copied that, which is quite a feat in itself, but with the technology that they had, it didn't really go over so well. So some of them you'll find that the rifling is really deep at the breech, and then it tapers away to nothing before it gets to the muzzle. So they're just not really a very good weapon to buy. And it surprised me that people in Canada were actually buying them, because Canada has probably the world's largest supply of original condition Snider-Enfields, and most of them tend to be in really good condition. This is about average. You'll find them in anything from near mint to worn out, basically. Most of the worn out ones were cannibalized and cut down. They would cut them off to here, and they'd plug the ramrod channel, and then cut the barrel down to about there, roughly approximating a cavalry carbine. And they would just stick a bead. They would actually drill a hole right through the barrel and put a bead on them. And those weren't ever intended for actually shooting. They were intended for drill by cadets and firing blanks. So there are a lot of those around, and people are asking rather ridiculous prices for them right now that I've noticed. And those aren't really a very good shooter. As I said, they were never really intended. Some of them were cut down from complete rifles. Like they would take a rifle like this and then cut it down. But what I've seen with a lot of them is that I think that they took rifles that were condemned, were cannibalized for parts, and then a lot of the parts were reutilized to make these cadet carbines. So if you're looking for a shooter, you're better off to find one of these full-length ones. Oh, hi Bartholomew. He's come to see what's going on, I guess. But these will shoot quite well. They would shoot really well when I did a lot of shooting with these in the late 90s, early 2000s. And what I used to use was the Rapine, I think it was called a trash can at the time. It was Bartholomew's chattering, he's seen a bird or something outside. But those shot really well. They were a little bit difficult to load, just because they were basically the same length as the breech block. So with the squared off bullet, when you dropped it in there, sometimes it would kind of get stuck, and you'd have to wobble it around a bit to get it into the chamber. But they shot really well, and I did for a while. Like there's a thing now, a lot of people like to use the oversized bullets. I have mixed feelings on that. And I know it works out really well for some people, but I did have a 3-band rifle. It was a Mark III, which was converted to the Mark II 2-star later. So the Mark II 2-star doesn't have a positive lock. It locks with a little... there's basically a detent here, and there's a little spring-loaded plunger that snaps into the detent. That's all it keeps it shut, which isn't a big deal because, well, you can see that the recoil forces are going to be straight back, so it's not like anything is going to be prying the breech block open. But what was happening with these in service was that the ammunition wasn't the greatest. It was kind of a Mickey Mouse assembly with a separate head and a coiled brass case body and everything. So sometimes those would burst, and then the gas would blow out and it would knock the breech block open. Then the base of the cartridge would fly off and hit the firer in the forehead or something. It wouldn't kill you, but it would, blacken your head and give you a little bit of a cut and that sort of a thing. So later on they came up with the Mark III breech block, which you pushed a little switch here. You can see those on YouTube, lots of videos on them. You push the switch, and then it has a big bolt that comes out of the back and locks into the breech plug. And those weren't exactly the greatest things. So sometimes, like the prevailing knowledge at the time said that the removal of all the metal at the back of the breech, they believed it to be detrimental to the shooting. So some of the Mark IIIs in Canada you'll find have had the Mark III action removed and replaced with a commercial Mark II 2-star action, and that was the one that I had. But anyway, that one had a new barrel. It was one of the new made steel barrels. I believe was dated 1870, 71, somewhere around there. 1870, I believe, was the date on the bottom of the barrel. And that one had kind of a rough throat. So what would happen after you'd fired a lot of these oversized bullets in there, you'd find that the gun would start to kick more. And I assumed that to be from the fouling. And then when I was cleaning it, I was pushing a patch through one day, and I actually pushed out a solid lead washer that had been building up in the throat. It pushed this washer out into the. I was looking at that. Well, what the heck is that thing? But then I realized what it was that the oversized bullets. I guess the throat in that particular rifle was probably a little bit tighter than normal, and maybe a little bit on the rough side, and it was actually shaving a significant amount of lead off of these oversized bullets. So that's really not a good thing to happen, because you end up with a big pressure spike as the bullet is trying to push its way past that, and it only gets worse. So after that, I've mostly kept using the original type of undersized bullets when firing these. It just seems to me to be a safer option all around. I mean, the thing's basically about 150 years old, so you really don't want to be pushing your luck when you're playing around with these. So I've had satisfactory accuracy using the Lee. It's the Civil War Burton bullet mold. They tend to be reasonably accurate, and I do want to try. There's a new option that I've seen available. They sell you a different plug to put in that mold that basically replicates the Japanese Snider bullet, so it gives you a deeper cavity in the base of the bullet. And I think that's the option that I'm going to stick with on this when I start shooting it. It just seems to me to be a safer option, and it's more period correct as well. It's not. I do like to keep things the way they were used in service. I figure, well, they got pretty good results with them at the time. They weren't idiots. There's a lot written on these and everything, and I figured, well, should be able to replicate reasonably closely the original ammo and have decent results. But yeah, they're nice. I highly recommend for every Canadian to have one of these. They're an important piece of our history. They're really cool with the crown of Queen Victoria, VR, Victoria Regina. And it's neat to have something that's been such a long part of our history. So as I was saying, this particular unit that this rifle belonged to was, I believe they were in the last of the Fenian raids. They were sent out for the first Red River Rebellion in 1870. I don't think they actually did anything, and Bartholomew's trying to ruin my sling, so I better get it out of his way. And they were also in the 1885 rebellion, so it is possible that this particular musket actually served through all of those conflicts. How much, whether it was actually fired in anger during those conflicts is debatable, but nevertheless, it was there. It was part of them. So, like I said, it's these are an important part of Canadian history, and I think every Canadian collection should have one in it. And they are a lot of fun to shoot. If you're into shooting old guns, this is the time to do it. X-Ring Services in the US cuts down the brass for these now. It's cheaper than it's ever been. Like back when I used to shoot mine a lot, I think the brass was like $5 a case at the end. I had a lot of them initially because I bought some from a fellow that was going out of business, and he sold me like 100 or something for, I think, $50 or some. It was a ridiculously cheap price even at the time. So then hard times came about, and I ended up selling the whole thing, like the Snider, the dies, the brass, the molds. I sold the whole works of it about 8 or 9 years back. So this particular one I've not shot yet, but it will be shot at some point. And I'll just put this on. This is actually called a snap cap. This is made so that you can use it for dry fire practice. And it has really nice crisp trigger pull too. There's no creep or anything in it. It's rather heavy, but it's a good pull. Doesn't hang up on the half cock notch or anything like you see some doing. But yeah, this would be a nice one to shoot for sure. And mostly it just hangs on the wall as an ornament, but there's no reason why you can't take these out and fire them occasionally. You don't want to get too carried away with them. But I think you're really doing them a disservice if you don't shoot them at all. And that's what they were made to do. And it's really cool to shoot something that's this old. It's quite amazing when you take something like this particular one. Probably hasn't been fired since probably 1920 or something, when ammunition was commonly available. It certainly showed no sign of having been fired. It did have a broken firing pin when I got it. The original pin was still in there, but it was broken, so God only knows how many years that was broken. And this is the original snap cap too. It came complete with that. Has the original sort of teardrop shaped chain links. So really nice. Like I said, everybody should have one. And you'll have to get the old Crimean crossbelt equipment to wear with it, with the carry your ammo in, of course. Take another look at the oldest character. Just imagine the service that this has seen. Some soldier was probably clutching this while he was riding the train to Saskatchewan. It's really been there and done that. Anyway, I hope my three viewers enjoy watching this video. I like to share this old stuff with people occasionally. Okay, that's all for now.